Hello, welcome to Parker Live. My name is Christina Holzhauser. I'm an executive assistant at Parker Staffing. For those of you who haven't joined Parker Live before, the purpose is to put a little good into the world. We're hoping that you leave feeling recharged and maybe even learn something new. Today we have blogger and founder of GoBurrows.com, creator of the Leader Assistant podcast, speaker, and author of The Leader Assistant from St. Louis, Missouri, Jeremy Burrows. Hello.
Hey, Christina, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Welcome. So excited.
Yeah,
I was wondering if you could please, start off by introducing yourself and sharing your background.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually from Kansas City, Missouri, grew up there, moved to St. Louis when I was about 19, and I've pretty much, I guess I've been an executive assistant now for 13 plus years, most of my career. And about 4 years ago, I started a blog, goburrows.com, and just started networking with assistants and executives all over the world with kind of this mission of helping them lead well without burning out. And so fast forward a couple years after I started, I really started doing more speaking and coaching and training assistants and executives as well. And then last year, a little over a year ago, I launched a podcast. So now I have, excuse me, I think I have 72 episodes or something like that. Pretty much publish a new episode every week. And then late last year, I had the crazy idea to also write a book and publish a book. And so that just came out in June. So it's been out for a little over a month. It's been an Amazon bestseller in a couple different categories. And I'm just excited to be here, and I'm passionate about helping others lead well and really lean into that leadership skill that we all have and develop it, but also not burn out.
I love it. And I've been a fan of yours ever since your blog first started in 2016. And it's just been so cool just to see everything you're accomplishing, and like seeing the podcast, they come out every week still. I know that that's a lot of work.
It's a lot, yeah.
And you wrote a book. So, I mean, it's just, you're very impressive. So let's dive into the topic. So I was curious, so how do you define, a leader? And I was curious also, second part of that is, how does that differ from being, like a high level executive or a manager?
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter what your title is. It doesn't really matter what your role is. Everyone is a leader. Everyone has influence. I think that what defines a leader is someone who recognizes that they have that influence and then kind of owns it and sees themselves as a leader. So even if you don't see yourself as a leader, you're still a leader. You're still influencing others, whether good or bad. So I think just kind of, again, it's not really the title. It's more, do you see yourself as a leader? And are you kind of leaning into that title of a leader, if you will? That's what defines a true leader.
I love that. And what would you say are, like the top, like game-changing characteristics that top leaders possess?
Yeah, I think the two biggest ones are confidence and humility. And so I like to talk about how really that you can't just be a confident, arrogant, aggressive person, but you also can't be a humble, like too humble in the sense of you just let people walk all over you. So there's this trait that I really think that all leaders exhibit, which is humble confidence. And so, that's probably, and I think your next question will dive into that a little bit deeper, but that's honestly those two characteristics are what I look for. And honestly, it could be one characteristic, humble confidence.
That's what I like. I was thinking about that as like a term. I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, and yeah, so I was going to dive into the confidence part. I know a lot of people do lack confidence, and I was just curious if you have any tips on how people can maybe improve in that area, gain confidence.
Yeah, I think the biggest key to confidence is there are a lot of different layers. Um, there may be lies that you tell yourself. There may be lies that other people have told you in your family of origin. There may be lies that your coworkers or executives tell you, and you believe those lies. And so that's kind of a little bit beneath the surface layer. But then even deeper than that is kind of what you do with those lies. And so the kind of number one tip I have for gaining confidence is to just basically remember this simple but hard to remember and hard to really soak in truth. And that's that you're a valuable human being, no matter how you perform at work, no matter what people say about you, good or bad, you're a valuable human being. And so what I try to do is just constantly preach that to myself as I'm getting ready to put myself out there in the world, or if something bad happens at work, or if I totally screw up and do something stupid with my family, or make a big mistake. Like, I just have to remind myself, listen, just because I screwed up, just because somebody said something, that does not impact my value as a human being.
I love that. That's just such a positive mantra. It seems like something good to like just put on your desk and look at every day. And it is a good reminder for we're all gonna mess up. I mean, but yeah, I love that. It doesn't impact your value. That's awesome. Um, and I was curious, how can leaders, future proof their careers?
Yeah, great question. So I think the two sides of it are the two sides of trying to future proof yourself in your career are artificial intelligence and emotional intelligence. So artificial intelligence, it's all about automation. So if you really want to future proof your role at a company, or what you're doing in your career, automate as much as you can. You don't want to be the person who your company comes to you 5 years from now, or 2 years from now, or 6 months from now and says, hey, sorry, we automated this process and now we don't need you anymore, or we're going to have to dock your pay and your hours because we've automated this whole half of your job.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to happen is you want to go to your company and say, hey, look what I've automated, and look at the systems that I've set up to automate these processes, and look how much time that's saving us, and look how much money it's saving the company. That's what you want to do if you really want to future proof your career. So that's kind of on the AI automation. So embrace AI, embrace automation. And my boss likes to say, automate before you're automated.
Oh, I like
And
that. Yeah.
I think that's a really good, simple way to say it. And then on the flip side is emotional intelligence. So you've got to learn to develop your EQ. You've got to learn to be kind to people. You've got to learn to be wise with and intentional with your vocabulary. You don't want to be just gossiping in the break room all the time, or you want to actually be helpful when you bring feedback to the team. So for example, instead of saying, hey, why can't so and so show up on time, that's not that helpful. But an emotionally intelligent future proof leader is intentional with their vocabulary, and they're going to say, hey, when so and so shows up late to these meetings, it really communicates to the team that they don't value our input, or they don't value the meeting. So is there something we can do to make the meeting more valuable? Or, so you see the difference is you're taking the context around you, and you're trying to actually solve these problems instead of just complaining. So again, artificial intelligence, automation, and then emotional intelligence, there's always gonna be things that you do that computers can take away, but computers aren't going to be able to empathize with your coworkers when their cat dies, or when their, father-in-law just had hip replacement surgery or whatever. Like they're not going to be able to really be personal and human, like you can. And so always developing our emotional intelligence is a great way to future proof.
Absolutely. Well, and I know, like thinking about artificial intelligence, I know you do a lot of coaching. And I'm curious if, like, I know you work with assistants mainly and executives, but I'm just curious if, like, a lot of people come to you feeling worried that, if they automate too much about their job, they might lose their job. Do people worry about that?
Um, I mean, some people are like, yeah, I don't want to do that because then yeah, you're right. Like they're afraid that they're going to go present the idea, and then they're going to say, well, what do we need you for?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
what we're finding is it's humans plus AI, not humans versus AI.
Mhm.
And so what we're actually finding is that the best AI tools and the best automation processes have humans in the loop. And so as long as you learn those systems and learn how the nuances of how they work and how to make them better, you can actually use your knowledge to train the AI. There are literally thousands of people that have jobs where their literal job is to just train the AI that Amazon or Google or whoever uses and it's building. Is their job is to check the data, confirm it, train it. So you can kind of be a knowledge um, sharing worker, or a knowledge management
Mhm.
lead, if you will. So if you do automate a bunch of stuff and your job's obsolete, well, I've actually known people who did something similar, but they just shifted their role into a knowledge management lead. And so they were basically the AI knowledge guru that would keep the data accurate, and again, train the AI.
Oh, I love that. Well, I haven't heard of that before. That's interesting. Very cool. Well, I know your company is involved in all this stuff, so um, that's interesting to hear about that.
I can kind of geek
Um,
out on it.
yeah, that's cool. Um, well, I know that kind of goes with like developing your skills and everything like that. And I was curious, how can someone who perhaps doesn't have professional training and development offered to them at work, how can they ask for that? I know that's kind of hard to do for some people, actually for a
Yeah,
lot of people.
yeah. I think the key is make it about your executive or your company. Um, make it make the ROI not about this is going to make my job easier,
Yeah.
but instead make it about this is going to save the company time and money. So that's one thing. Second thing is get creative with timing your requests during budget season, during a high revenue quarter, when the mood is a little more pleasant in the office. Um, you can also get creative and say, hey, I know our department doesn't have a budget, but could I bundle this up with a different department's budget? Or honestly, if they still are not really all about your professional development, or you're not getting any budget, you can always, there's plenty of free resources, but you can also, I know we're not doing live events right now because of COVID, but you can also volunteer to help run and help manage events, because a lot of events need people to check people in at the registration table. So you can actually, often you can go volunteer somewhere and to help out with registration, for example, and then get to go into the event and get the professional development at no cost. Whereas if you were just to buy a ticket, it might be $2,500. So there are different ways that you can get creative and get your professional development.
I love that. Those are really helpful tips. I never thought about like volunteering. That's awesome. Um, Let me see. So we have a few more minutes. I want to ask my last question. So I was curious, what are like a few things that leaders can do to resist burnout and practice self-care? I know that's a major issue.
Yeah, so I used to say I used to try to help people avoid burnout, And then I realized that it's actually impossible to avoid burnout. Everyone is going to burn out at some point in their career and to some level. But the key is to resist burnout. And so we can and limit the effects that the burnout has. So a couple of tips would be, well, first of all, just recognize what stressors could drive you to burnout. Maybe it's, a lack of passion at your job, or maybe it's your skill set is not quite up to par with your company. And so you're really pushing too hard, or it could be the other way where your skills have outgrown the company that you're in and you're just not challenged. And so you're just kind of like burnout and you don't really enjoy it. And then also recognizing the signs of burnout is key. So are you irritated more than usual? Are you tired or sick more often? Are you, if you see these types of signs, then you're probably burned out. And then as far as resisting it, I think the best ways to resist it are to set boundaries. Set boundaries with your, work schedule. Maybe say, hey, Wednesday nights I'll be available if you need anything, but Tuesday and Thursday nights I'm logging off. I'm offline. I'm not going to be available. And then make sure you have a 24-hour Sabbath on the weekend, to where you have 24 hours straight, no email, no Slack or Teams, instant messaging with work, and it's 24 hours every weekend, and that's kind of a reset. But then the other thing I would say about resisting burnout would be hobbies. If you don't have a hobby, then when you get to those times where you do have a day off or a vacation or whatever, you're not going to know what to do with yourself, and so then you're going to end up working, and that's definitely a recipe for burnout.
That's a really good tip about making sure you have hobbies, because I do hear people say, sometimes when they work late, oh, it gives me something to do. And yeah, that's just doesn't seem like a good recipe.
That's what happened to me. Is my hobby used to be playing guitar. Then I had a job where I was basically playing guitar was my job. And then it kind of shifted from being an enjoyable hobby to just making me think about work. And then once I stopped doing guitar for work, I still didn't do it for a hobby because I just didn't enjoy it as much. And so instead of replacing my hobby with something else, I just didn't have one. And so I worked every time I had a day off or whatever. And then, I burned out pretty quickly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been awesome, Jeremy. I really appreciate you being here. This has been really fun chatting with you.
Yeah, likewise.
I would love it if you would mind, sharing where people can find you online, how they can connect with you.
Yeah, probably the easiest place is just to go to leaderassistant.com. And I've got info on my book, my podcast, coaching. But my book is called The Leader Assistant, and it's for, you've got one, I've got one. It's for assistants, but the way that it's written, honestly, executives and anybody can benefit from it, because I talk a lot about practical tips on email management, time management, calendar management, that you can apply to yourself, even if you're not an assistant. And then obviously burnout, how to resist burnout and all that is in there as well. So I would love to have you check it out, leaderassistant.com.
That's a great book. I went through it real fast, and I have so many bookmarks.
Nice.
It's a good one.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again for being here, Jeremy. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and feel free to reach out to anybody if you have questions, and good luck with everything.
Have a good one. Bye.